So percentages is a pretty interesting concept. So let's start by looking at the total profit. So I'm going to first start with view. So I have 286,000 and then I'm going to add my product and then I'm going to look at date. Okay, so this is one good thing with Tableau. So accidentally, rather than dragging up order date, I dragged out order ID and it says, hey, you have too many filters. Do you want to really do that? So because I did it accidentally, I'm going to say no. So because if it has more than 1000 marks to plot, then it is going to give you an error, a warning saying that your view is going to be really cumbersome. So you definitely don't want to do that. So I'm going to say do not add, and then I'm going to go for order date and say okay, add my order date right there. So this is how it is divided. And if I go by so if you see, let's add the totals and subtotals first. Adding my totals and subtotals across. So I have 286k, and if you see, maybe if you look at it, 6000 is pretty good and 4000. Okay, let's now go to analysis, say percentage of table. So this is important. These are the different options. So of my 100%, this is the 300 versus 1%, and I had 2.4% positive. So if you see in this case, this each value that is being calculated right here is percentage of this value. So any value that you see here is calculated as percentage against this value. So now let's go back and say percentage of row, right? So what it basically does is, if my row is 100%, so of this value rather than this value which we did earlier, for each row it's going to take 100% and then calculate it accordingly. So for example, in book cases in 2011 we did 10% of your total sale, but in 2012 it was 79, which means you did really good in 2012, but then you started losing it. So now let's do it the other way. Let's do it column. You cannot do both because you have only 100%. So right now, this if this is 100%, what is this value? So that's what we are kind of playing around. But if you have subtotals and stuff, the way you calculate it is you can say in row in pain or column in pain, which basically means row in pain is if for 2011, if my total value is 100%, how much did it contribute? So let's see that row, it is column in pain. So where so let's say we display all subtotals, right? So in this case, if this is 100%, then each of these values are like 6.3, 36.1, and 57. The reason you are seeing a 127 percentage is because you have negative values where we are losing. So if you got $100 and you made 120 on one category and you lost 20 on other category, the total sum is still 100 and one of them is making 120% and the other one is losing. So the summation of all of this will total up to 100, and so this is what we mean by the total percentages. So it's really interesting on how this basically turns out if you especially drill it down to further levels, right? So if you drill it down to quarter, if you see there are like huge percentage gaps, spikes, especially in 600, 400s, because what we are doing is we are trying to capture it by the total percentages value at each quarter is 100%. So in each quarter, what is your contribution? So these numbers are really staggering. So it does not really matter much. So let's go back to the year level and try to see if we can do a plot graph to see. So the big thing here is everything is 100% because we are not really drilling down much, because at the year level everything matters to be 100. So let's drill it down by quarter or month and then change the axes, right? Okay, it says let's go to edit axis and say independent, and they don't want to include 0. And if you look at it, everything is 100%. Let's go and look at the data. The reason it is being 100% is because we are going too detailed, and at that detail we are only calculating the profit margin. Sum of profit is 100% for each of those. So let's drill down. Rather than doing that, let me remove that first place and re-add my order date in there. And now what is this, and let me see what is the analysis I have of it. Does not have any percentage of, that's the reason it is basically showing you that. Now let's say row percentage, and now let's go and do some visualization there. So as you can see, data is being moving up and down. So I will let change my edit access and I will say independent. I don't want to include 0. So now if you look at it and I click now if you look at it, you're kind of getting a view that accessories is your sales of accessories is kind of going up over a period of time. So if you drill it down by quarter, now you can kind of see how kind of trend. This is percentages, so it kind of helps you. It's a uniform percentage, so it always compares to your previous value. So it is pretty uniform and you basically compare on what it is. So for example, bookcases you have been losing and then you're making profit in your last quarter, so you kind of look at what kind of data it is and how you're kind of drilling down into further stuff. So the more detail you go, these graphs become very, like for example, if I can click subtotal further, but it is like at a product name, for example, if you look at the hierarchy, it is going to be really cumbersome. So it is going to really be crazy. So it does not really matter what we are trying to talk about, but you can definitely do that, and you can play around with the data a lot. So this is percentages, especially in line graphs, will kind of help you do a lot of trend analysis. So let's go back to the percentages where we were. So that's all with percentages and this section. So in this section we started off talking about the level of detail, and then we talked about groups, then we talked about hierarchies, then we talked about sets, then we talked about filtering and how do we do sorting, and then we also talked about some of the totaling and subtotaling, and then percentages and income trend analysis. So at a high level, this is what we did. So let me know if you have any questions. This concludes our third section in the course, and in our next section we will start doing more adding new columns and new calculations, where we will calculate new fields and stuff and kind of use those to plot our graphs.